Welcome to episode number 37. How's everyone doing?
Happy Friday, guys!
Yes, sir. Yes.
Happy Friday. How's everyone feeling about a bi-weekly, one episode every 2 weeks?
I'm still getting used to it. How are you guys doing?
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's a different level of intensity, should I say? Yeah.
How about you?
I'm half asleep.
You are rather asleep, did you say?
I'm half asleep.
You're half asleep. Okay. So you're here with myself, Olu, Shuwel, Daniel, Pabilo. So on this week's episode, we're going to be talking and following up about health, which we talked about a few weeks ago. But we want to focus more about health in the Black and minority community. What can we do in regards to improving our health? And do we feel like there's actually the health system there in place for minorities? And then the book review will be taken by Shuwel. So stay tuned and let's get started.
Take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're flying.
Yes, so guys, as Ollie did a very nice introduction at the beginning. So what I wanted to talk about is health in the Black, Asian, and minority communities, and why. At least this is my perception, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Why are we suffering more in terms of health now? Where this topic has stemmed from is, I think I've mentioned in an episode a few years ago that my dad went through a stroke, and that was the first time that I'd seen him in a hospital with a serious illness. And then when I was there at the hospital, I was just reading different leaflets and different material and information regarding the stroke. And what I realized is that things like stroke, heart attack, prevalence of diabetes, high blood pressure, these are much, much higher in the Black and brown communities versus the white British communities, at least within the UK. There's studies that have been done and statistics that even though as a population, the Black and Asian and minority community isn't the biggest community in the UK, but as a proportion of that population, more people are suffering. So it kind of made me reflect on why is this happening? And I mean, I've got my own reasons in my head, but I wanted to get your guys' view, and also what have you observed in your communities? Because for me, it's kind of clear why it's happening. So I guess the first question I would have for you guys is, do you think those communities that I mentioned are suffering more the older they get, or do you think actually maybe my observation isn't correct?
I don't think your observation is correct.
Ooh, all right, hit me. Why?
I just don't think it is. I haven't done any research.
Doesn't agree with your hypothesis.
I just don't agree. I need some data now. No, I do agree. I would say I do believe that the amount of minorities that visit hospital in proportion to the population size is larger than any or white Caucasians people. But I think before you start to look at sort of the care in which minorities receive, because I think this is really a two-part question. Mm-hmm. One is related to the care in which minorities receive when they go into the hospital. Mm-hmm. And I would say either the lack or not the same sort of standard of care. But I think before that, you need to look at sort of the bypass and how, like, what's happening for them to need to go to the hospital at such a frequent rate. Mm-hmm. So I think it ties into many areas where it's like poverty is one. Yeah. So if you look at the neighborhood in which minorities, when they move over to the country, live, mm-hmm. and you go to certain areas, you realize that the restaurants that are around those areas, you see like KFC around every corner, McDonald's around every corner, versus more
even PFC and Chicken Cottage, and even if a KFC is in the area, sometimes that area is not that bad. But if you see a PFC and Chicken Cottage, then you're
exactly where you're not even sure if it's chicken. You don't even know it's too cheap.
It might be a summer house vibe.
But in comparison to affluent areas where you see a Whole Food, and fresh fruits and veg around that area, which also the prices of the difference, sometimes it's cheaper to fill your system and your body with unhealthy food versus if you want to get a nice smoothie, you know, you're paying £5 for a smoothie, £5-6 for a smoothie versus going to KFC and whatever and get like a milkshake for £2 or whatever price it is.
Well, I don't want to keep referencing Top Boy, but you know that clip when Deshane walks into that coffee shop and they ask for a coffee and it's $3.50.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like that's one of the reasons. So one is the area and sort of the neighborhood in which people grew up in and the level of poverty. I'll let the rest of the guys jump in because I've got
it's also this topic, like many others, a lot of it starts and ends with education. And when I was making my notes for this, I was thinking to myself, I didn't learn anything valuable about health in school. So that's a good, 10, 12, 13 years where there's not anything dedicated around why you shouldn't have, you should cut down on your sugar, your salt, oily, fatty foods, etc. And it's only until you get into your late 20s, early 30s, where maybe you might start to peel into that area of what's the right diet to have, and maybe this is a good idea. So there's a serious lack of education for us to be able to tap into, to understand why it's important to service our bodies. Because I think the only education that we have in our community is when we actually fall ill. And then we realize, I can't do anything now. So maybe I should think about managing my health. And usually, and unfortunately, at that stage, it's too late.
For sure.
So you're saying that prevention is better than a cure?
Yeah, my dad always said that. My dad's a doctor. He always said that.
Yeah, I agree with what you
Daniel,
said.
are you okay? Have you been having enough sleep?
Look at you.
It's been a long week.
Pull through. Come on, pull through.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. What you're saying when it comes down to a lack of education, we don't take the time to find out what the effects of things will have on us until it's too late. And even when we do notice signs and symptoms, we often just ignore them. So we know something's not right. What's wrong? Do you agree?
That back pain that you've been having for years, and you're like, yeah, man, I just need to stretch more.
It's gone beyond stretching, I'll tell you that. But no, you sometimes notice things and you put it off. Then you might go and see a doctor. When did this start? About 2 years ago, 6 months ago. So why didn't you come in earlier? And to be honest, it's a thing where even some people are nervous. Some people don't like going to doctors because they're afraid of what they might say. So they start doing a self-diagnosis, and everyone's done that kind of. I've got a headache. You go onto Google. You start googling headache or some severe pain in your chest. You're saying, "Oh no, this is a sign of there's a heart attack on set." And so, you got tingling in your left arm. Then you start thinking, I've got tingling in my left arm. And it says, call 999. So some people don't help themselves. But going back to the topic of us as minorities, we just don't seem to care. And I was even having a conversation with someone at work on Tuesday. Another he's Nigerian as well. And we're just talking about stuff. And then he spoke about a bereavement of someone he knew, and he said, it was just it was bad. He said, us, we'll just eat pounded yam, you'll eat all this stuff, all this content, and you don't really think of it, and you don't think about what it's doing to you inside. And then all is it's not going to end well for you. Like, you're getting older, but in Nigeria, typically, like, a big belly is a sign of you're living good.
Oh my God, Nigeria to Bangladesh, Daniel. The amount of arguments I'd have with my dad when I transitioned from a chubby teenager to trying to be a slimmer adult. My dad during that period thought I was suffering from anorexia. He was like, "What are you doing? If your face ain't round, you ain't healthy, bro." And I was like, "Nah, that's not how it works in 2020. What does that mean? 2011?
People say like when you put on weight on your belly, you're wealthy. They're like,
you're living good.
You're
good. You're doing well. But that's what I would say.
The other challenge to that is there's also an element of these types of foods being culturally attached to our identity. So, for example, if we look at, for example, African foods, a lot of the African dishes have a lot of, say, palm oil or oil in them, which we know is not healthy. I mean, I used to look at it when I was younger and think to myself, yeah, I'm gonna swim in that. I'm gonna swim. Yeah. And now when I look at it, I think when I went to one function, I looked and I thought to myself, I'm not having that at all.
Yeah.
And so there's like, and so if you were to say to sort of blacks and browns, guys, maybe you should start to have more bland foods or more salads and diets, they wouldn't, before they even get to, oh, is this healthy for me? They'll say that's not part of my culture. I'm not gonna have that. Sorry.
That's a side dish.
That's not even a stat.
That's not.
That's that. Let me give me some of that pine oil like this.
So there's like it's almost like we have to retrain our taste buds and reprogram our entire minds around. It's not about sticking to what is culturally our identity, but going with what is the healthier option. So it's a tough one to break.
Daniel, you mentioned something that I had a question on in regards to why do you think it is that minorities struggle to go to the hospital early enough? Because there's obviously the history of minorities and hospital and treatments and them experimenting on minorities. No, that's true in terms of in part, which has led to a fear factor why people don't want to go to the hospital, because like people say, you go to the hospital because you've got a headache. All of a sudden they're saying, hey, let's take off a leg or an arm. Or, you understand? like you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden it's going to like some extreme aspect of it. And
no, I laugh. But I think I laugh, but I think that is people's genuine concern. They don't want to hear, like I remember growing up, the one thing that myself and Leslie, we noticed, if we have any type of injury, we break our ankle, sprain it, we go to sleep. You go to sleep. Sleep was like go to sleep. Just lie down. Don't go to the hospital. Don't tell your mom, just lie down. But going back to your point, I mean, it just goes to show how silly some of the ideas are. But going back to your point, I think what we do dread is going to the hospital and the doctor saying, okay, we need to do an operation. Come in next week.
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to shit. People see it as an inconvenience. It's inconvenient for you to go and then to spend time to do tests, to do things, because typically as a minority, you're trying to work hard to provide for your family, and then you suffering or taking time out to address something with you can be deemed as selfish and then putting a burden on other people to maybe have to step in or help out, because we always like to perceive ourselves as strong. Black, Asians, we all like to see ourselves as we're strong. We don't want to depend on other people. So if I'm taking time out, that means the focus is going to be on me. People have to care for me. I think people are going to have to maybe help my family out to some regard, and people never like to be a burden on someone else.
Yeah, I mean
that's a severe case, but also the health comes down to also exercise.
Yeah.
It's just something that it's not culturally ingrained within us that we need to exercise. It's always about just eating, enjoying, dancing at parties and stuff. But then when you take it to
some of that pine oil still like this.
but when you take it to like Southeast Asia, when you look at China, when you look at that demographic, you see people living well into their 80s, into the 90s, because they do exercise every day. I don't know if you've seen videos, but these elderly people, every single morning, they're doing some sort of Zumba or something in the whole community. And
I think it's Tai Chi. I think it's Tai Chi, especially in the Chinese community. It's like a form of yoga, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, they keep active.
Asian specialist.
in more ways than one. But no, I think so. I think we've covered some of the main things. So we're saying like access to healthcare, the proximity of certain types of food in the areas. I think education also is a big one, and Daniel's kind of more from the cultural perspective. I think I just wanted to quickly share some statistics about these diseases and illnesses. So statistics in the UK show, and I assume this is probably very common in a lot of Western countries. If you are of a South Asian background, you are at a higher risk of developing coronary heart disease, which could lead to heart attacks. This is a fact. If you are over 65 and of a South Asian background, you are at a greater risk of having a stroke. again, a fact in the UK. If you are an African Caribbean background, you may be more likely to have high blood pressure. And then people of African, Caribbean, and South Asian ethnicity are more likely to get type 2 diabetes than the rest of the population. So these are all statistics in the UK where people have done studies. And when I say here South Asian, it means the Bangladeshi, Indian, and Pakistani community, where they have the biggest risks on their health and how to manage. So, I mean, I was reflecting on all of this last night, also preparing for the podcast. And I was having a conversation with my dad. So I was like, Dad, like let's have a conversation here. So you've obviously had a stroke. And there are moments when I ask him, why do you think that happened? And he tells me, I have no idea, son. Like, I was super healthy before. And he was actually in hospital.
I love your quotes, man.
Oh, mate, the optimism. Optimism is on a different level. So I was like, all right, Dad, so if you're healthy, let me understand this. So out of you and your friends, you're all of a similar age. I would say that most of them have either diabetes, blood pressure problem, cholesterol problem, have had a stroke and a heart attack. And then his reaction was like, yeah, but it's not a community problem, because if you go to the hospital and you look around on my ward, most of the people that are white British people. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. But I had to draw a diagram for him. Like, if you imagine the big population of Portsmouth, yes, the majority is white British, but the proportion of them as a total that is in the hospital is maybe 5 or 10%. Now, of course, if the population of the Asian community in this example is smaller, but then nearly half of that population is in the hospital, then we have a bigger problem. And I actually drew it out for him, and he was like, you know what, you're right. And I was like, Dad, I think this is because your generation had a lack of education and information about it. And he was like, yeah, but how many doctors have strokes? They got lots of information. And I was like, that's not the angle that I'm trying to come at. I'm just saying that, look, think of how many of your friends, when you were my age, like now all of us, we go to the gym, we're eating healthier. But when you were my age, I know you had lots of other things going on. You had a family to support in the UK. You had much bigger problems than I have now, and I recognize that. But there was no one who was probably going to the gym. When it came to food, everyone was dashing all that pine oil everywhere, but no one was thinking, what's the impact here? And then having this conversation with him, I think he's realized, and I've seen a behavioral change in him and in my mother as well. Like, if I think about the food we eat now as a family compared to 20 years ago when we were growing up, my mum is using much more healthier ingredients. Pine oil, any of those oils are not in the house anymore. Instead of white rice, it's brown rice. And there's much more education around the fact that we need to exercise regularly, we need to eat healthier, and we need to sleep as well. I think sleep is also something that my dad realized was something that he wasn't doing before. So as a community, I can see that generation, a lot of them, they've got diabetes now, so they need to manage all of this. But there's still that kind of part in their head where they think, "No, do you know what? I was all right anyway." So it's an evolution. But I think at least within our generation, I think we're doing a lot more. But then I wanted to know what's the experience been with you guys with regards to your families and stuff, and how do you see our generation at least getting a bit better? I think having the dialogue like this should also help as well.
Yeah. So family-wise, so my mom retired nurse. So you would be that she has obviously the education element of health, the body, how it works. But it was never anything really mentioned in our family. I never remember us sitting down and saying, hey, this is what you're supposed to eat. If obviously if I'm sick or whatever, she'll treat me, she'll tell me what I need to do, etc. But it was never anything that was sort of proactively discussed. When you talk about food wise, there's no telling a Nigerian woman what she can and cannot cook.
Have you seen her cooking kind of develop and change over the years in terms of how she's doing, or it's pretty much stays the same?
No, like my mom would say, yeah, make sure you have your salad, and sometimes she'll give a salad for like a pre-meal sort of snack. But no, we still have the jollof rice, the pounded yam, the eba, amala, all of that stuff. Which, to be honest, I love as well.
Well, you're making me sound hungry, Olu. Just listen.
I believe everything should be within moderation. But I think the key thing which I've seen a change in my mom is just in regards to exercising. So this is something that I've given my mum so much feedback, like, Mum, you need to stop driving, because I think with the access of the accessibility of having a car, you can just feel like you need to drive everywhere. And my mum would go maybe like 5 minutes down the road, but she'll still drive. So now, like, I've seen that she just gets out, takes walks. She's even started badminton, which I was like, yeah, she started badminton class. And I was like,
Wait, shout out Olu's mum. To start something like that, that's a serious thing. It's not easy for people.
And she's always telling me that the instructor's like, oh, she's so good, she's so fit and everything. And I've told her I'm gonna come to one of her classes.
Olu, is that instructor male or female, bro?
I never asked that question, but I'm sure it's all legit. I'm sure it's all legit. But I've told her I need to come to one of her badminton class and see what she's talking about, because she's like, yeah, I'm so good. She bought a racket, a badminton racket, and everything like that. So I'm like,
you might need to go down and check that coach, because sounds like your mum's got a big fan.
But I think that's one of the areas that I've seen a change in, just in regards to exercise. And obviously, as my mum is getting older, she's my brother and my sister-in-law just had their first child. Yeah, about to have the second child. She wants to be around for her grandkids and be healthy and walking around. So the exercise element, I've seen an improvement. To be honest, I haven't sat down and talked about the food element of it. So I think that's an area that definitely. But my mom's good with sugar. Like, she's always telling me super malts, Coke, all of these things she stays away from. Yeah. And I'm sure Daniel gets the same in regards to WhatsApp chains. So whenever
I don't get that. Actually, you don't get that.
So what you receive is one of your parents' friend will send your mom a message about random stuff. Some could be health.
I mean, like a video of health, like cucumber helps you for this and blah blah blah.
This. And all of a sudden, you find your mom just forwarding you random videos from random places and random sources.
Matt, do you know what's funny? It's funny when your mom starts forwarding you pictures of potential girls that she thinks you should marry. Now that's weird. That's the zone. That's the zone that I'm in nowadays.
I don't receive that. So.
Oh, Mum, did you mean to send?
She might find someone in the badminton class for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the 70 or 60-year-old women that's in
Cougar.
Ladder.
What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, how about you guys?
You spoke. I forgot the question now.
So basically, have you seen a change in your kind of family over the time, and also maybe the generation around you? So Olu basically said exercising.
Oh yeah. When I grew up, when I was growing up, I just ate a lot of junk food, pure junk food, and I think it's like pure junk.
Any more?
Thing is, Daniel's a big boy as well. For people, for the listeners that haven't met Daniel is a big boy.
And I think it was when when I turned 16, I then joined the gym, and I lost a lot of weight because I thought, I need to do something about this, and this was personal choice.
Daniel, tell me, how big we talking?
Boy, I can get some pictures if you want.
Let's do that. That'd be an Instagram post. All of us can send a picture of what we look like as a child.
There's some pictures of me as a baby that are like bad. Like when I lived with my grandma, I used to get fed 6 times a day. So,
bruv,
I ain't seen these pictures.
My grandma used to like feed me with her way of showing love was by feeding me. So,
but to be honest, I think that's a something a woman does naturally. But anyway, I digress. So lost a lot of weight, and I think usually what happens in a family setting, when someone picks up certain habits, people tend to start subconsciously doing the same thing. And so other people, like for example, if I was to go to shops to buy certain ingredients for food, the family would then pick up and start doing something similar. If you're exercising, people start to do it. And I wasn't the first one to start exercising, and it's something that people start doing. And if you start saying, oh, like especially the child saying to their parents, oh, we need to start doing this, or we need to drink more water. Your parents, my parents would listen and start drinking more water. Or if I say something to like my mum, she loves tea. I'd be like, she'd say, oh, can you make me a cup of tea? I'm like, no, you're not. I said, how much water have you drank today? And then she just look at me. So I'll bring her a glass of water rather than a cup of tea. And so things like that just become natural changes in the environment that you're living in. And over time, they change. I've never been a big fan, Nigerian food. I eat it from time to time, usually at parties or birthdays or whatever it may be, to function. But at home, it just wasn't something that I would say, yeah, I want that. And even, you know, it's time spent in Nigeria when, you know, we have a cook. The first, like, I think my mum bought a massive bottle of oil, like, for in the house, just to keep, like, it's the oil for, you know, she's thinking for months. This guy used it within 2 weeks, the whole bottle, the cook. Like, the whole bottle of oil he used within like 2 weeks. Our mum, he came to mum and said, the oil's finished.
He probably thought he was doing a good job as well. Like, that's what he was supposed to do.
Like, my mum, he said, then he came to mum, oh yeah, he needs money for oil. My mum was like, what? But there's oil. He said, no, it's finished. And she was shocked. Because she had to show him how to cook, because he was basically putting so much oil that the oil was swimming, the food was swimming in the oil. Like, it was just, and that's where you're talking about culturally ingrained things and how things are done. In Nigeria, you just put oil in everything, because oil also makes the food last longer, so you get more out of it. So for example, corned beef stew, if you put a lot of oil, you can feed a lot more people. These faces like, but it comes to the point where it's some things are just, you know, you learn by growing up thinking, oh yeah, I need to put a lot of oil. But also he didn't know that you can cook with not using so much oil. And these type of things just, you know, just you have to sometimes retrain or reprogram your brain on how you do things. And also it's about education. I think we live in a day and age where there's so much information available on Google, on Olu's best friend, Google, that you can find things on whatever it may be. And I think we will have to take ownership of ourselves, because we say lack of education. We can educate ourselves on a number of things these days. Anything you want to learn, there is going to be something on Google. Not everything will be a credible source, but there'll be something out there that is free for you to educate yourself.
Yeah.
And even ourselves, we know how, you know, we should be eating or doing certain things or exercising regularly. And it's our choice of whether we do it or not.
Yeah, 100%.
Because there's also education. There's education, but there's also action.
I think our generation has probably got the least amount of excuses possible. If we're still eating that pounded yam and curry every day, then we've actually got no excuses, just because we're just completely ignorant. But Pete, how's your experience been with your, well, at least with your family and what you saw in the culture growing up?
Yes, no, so they're both my mom and my dad are in much better places health-wise than they were in the past, I'd say. So my mother, what she's done really well, similar to Olu's mum, she's never been a fan of fizzies. She's always stayed away from fizzies for as long as I can remember, and also she's always stayed away from red meat. So she's never delved into lamb or steak or anything along those lines. It's just
I know I'm not aware of the running joke, but you guys should get her to try Olu's steak.
Oh, no, thank you.
No.
I want to.
You'll be running.
I've never tried Olu's steak. But whenever this is mentioned, really recognize Pabilo and Daniel's face whenever this is mentioned.
You'll be running. I tell you, you'll be running to the toilet.
I want to be around.
Cool. Pete, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's cool. But then with my one of the things I'd say is she would. What we changed from the last few years is she would always make, I don't know, an excuse. She would be so busy that she would never have time to work out. And she would basically seem as that, and that was basically her norm. I don't have time to sort of go 2 hours to Virgin Gym because I'm sort of in Sainsbury's or I'm dropping this off. I'm busy. So I think that was one of the points I think Olu or Daniel mentioned, which was also in the communities that it's not excusable to make excuses around we don't have enough time to go to the gym. That you can always do a morning run. You don't have to actually sign up to gym, but you can always do a morning run, a morning sort of stretches in the morning, some yoga, but something where you're moving the body, I think is absolutely imperative. For my dad, what's interesting is although his profession is a doctor, he's actually been a patient all his life at the same time. He's suffered from a number of things. He's unable to sleep for longer than say 3-4 hours, hypertension. He actually takes Novartis drugs, Diavan. But one thing that changed for him is his blood pressure was I think there was a time when we was in Saudi Arabia, it was skyrocketing to say north of 200, or at least 180, 190, 200. And I think he went through a series of
the recommended amount. So
your blood pressure should be like 140, 120, 140. So, and I think he had a few episodes there where he thought okay, I really need to make now a difference in the way I manage my body. So he doesn't do, I think for maybe the last 10, 12 years, no salt, no sugar. And when I mean no, I mean if the food has any salt in it, he's not eating. You can even smell it. No salt, no sugar. And I think he has a lot more machinery around him to check his blood pressure, his blood sugar. So he looks a lot better. He's probably like almost 70 and he looks great. So I think what he's taking the approach of like managing himself and making sure that he becomes like, I think there was one time where there was a bit of salt in the food and he switched on the whole family and said, look, you know what time it is. I don't do this. So I think you have to take it. You have to make it a priority as much as anything else.
Sure. What do you guys think about? Because I think there's two elements of it. Not regularly getting checked up. Because if I ask everyone at Puff, I know Daniel's good at this, but if I ask the rest of the guys, when was the last time you got a full physical check in terms of blood levels, etc.? When was the last time you guys got it?
My one was so it's something that I never really did, but then when I started working in Japan, basically it's law for all employees to have an annual health check that's provided by the company. So the 2 years that I was in Japan, I got into the routine of doing that annually. And then when I came back to Switzerland last year, I did one as well last year. So now I'm kind of got into the routine, but it's more because of being in an environment where it was mandatory and then getting used to it to now wanting to continue to do it at least once a year.
P.
I mean, I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember the last time I had a check. And what was interesting is, so I don't think I've had one in maybe the last 10 years, maybe more. But to Shuwel's point, our company actually provides free checkup. So actually, I had an appointment booked. But then what happened was I just skipped it. I just thought, whatever.
Yeah,
so what I did,
more that night or something like that.
Yeah. So what I've done is I've actually bought myself, for myself, Lauren, is a blood pressure machine, so we can check it whenever, and also blood sugar machine. So I think every 3 months we'll just do the checks ourselves at home.
Where did you get your medical degree from?
My dad.
Like, I'm gonna check myself.
It's genetically passed down.
One thing I wanted to add is my dad doesn't really send me too much information, interesting enough. But he did send me one video of a professor talking about how he hasn't had a cold in years. And so he says the way people basically destroy their own immune system. And one of the driving factors behind that is the sugar. So if people were to cut down the amount of sugar that they had, they wouldn't have as many colds, they would have more energy. And so it's like you become more self-sufficient. So sometimes we think, oh, I have a cold because I was out for too long, or I wasn't wrapped up well. No, it's probably because you've lowered your immune system by the level of sugar that you've had. So the guy was saying he doesn't have much apple juice or anything that has any level of sugar, he doesn't have.
Because you'll be surprised, like sometimes when you do catch those colds as well, you realize that something's changed. Like you mentioned, your diet, or you're like stressed, like you realize that you're stressed at work and you easily pick stuff up. So I believe all of those things are connected. In regards to myself, look, I'm just like P, man. I can't remember the last time I've had a.
Come on, guys, we're doing an episode on health and no one's doing their health checks. Come on.
What I would say just but like the machinery cost me like 100 for the blood pressure.
I'm just gonna get like a specialist to just do the test. You know,
it's a couple of hours and they run that. They look at your body from head to toe. I'm sure Daniel's someone who's probably done it regularly. So I wonder how.
I'm turning 30 in what, 2 months, or so I'm gonna get it done before I turn 30 to say, okay, this is my MOT. This is what's working. This is what's not working. This is what needs to be.
Speaking of MOT, I think Daniel, you mentioned this on the previous episode. We should see our body like a vehicle, right? Yeah. Okay. I thought it was just worth mentioning again.
But I think the one thing that I'm really good at is if drinking water. I drink a lot of water, but if I feel like something's up, I go straight to the hospital. Like, and let me tell you one funny thing. Nathan gives me a hard time about this story, but I hope I don't get in trouble for it. But anyways, I was having like knee issues. Yeah, like my knee was killing me for such a long time.
Sounds like someone I know.
Bro, I'm all right. I'm good.
And I would just ice it. The next week I play football. Ice it next week. I was just like, yo, what's going on? So I was like, you know what? Let me book an appointment with a GP. So I walk into the GP, yeah.
Knee issues.
And I'm like, oh, can you check my knee? Can you see what's going on? Yeah. And he was like, oh, so, and I was like, yeah, I play football, blah, blah, blah. And he was under the impression I was a footballer. And I didn't correct him. So he was like, oh, yeah, I'm surprised your team, medicals, like the medical team won't. And I was like, yeah, you know, I just thought it would be better for me to go through the NHS versus this. This guy referred me.
Olu, I think he knew. I think he was gassing you. He knew he wasn't.
I don't know if he was gassing me. I didn't correct him. So then he referred me to like a knee specialist. In like a week or no, it was a month. It took a month for him to refer me to a knee specialist. Yeah. By the time I got to the knee specialist, I had sort of forgotten which knee the problem.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
So I get there and I'm like, and they're like, oh, which knee should we do the scan on? And I was like, oh, my left one. And she's like, oh, the notes say your right one.
This is fraud. Straight fraudsters just walked into my clinic.
And I was like, oh, yeah, let's do both. Just make sure. So they scan both. They scan both knees and everything like that. And they're like, oh, they actually found something, but it was like something I was born with, etc., etc. But then, like, my kneecap is.
No, go on.
So with my kneecap is split, but they said that some people born with like a split kneecap, it shouldn't cause the pain that it is. So, anyways, they referred me to get physio, and Nathan was just having a go. Nathan was like, "Yo, like, how are you getting referred to just all these different things?" And I was like, everyone's always complaining about NHS, but NHS seems good for me. Like, I mean, even though I got private care, I was like, oh, let me go for NHS. So I got referred to like for physio, which I did for like 2 months.
Olu, how much is private care? So for the listeners,
my work. So I do it through my work account, and they subsidize some of it, but I pay, I think it's £50 out of my salary a month.
Daniel, how much you pay for private care?
Mine's part of salary sacrifice. I think it's about maybe £600 a year or so. I think.
Yeah, so like the 50 a month, 60, 50 a month.
I think it's about 600 or something or so a month. But also on, I know we're gonna start wrapping up soon, but based on what Oli said about physio, because I just feel as though often when we do get, for example, maybe it's antibiotics or a treatment plan from a doctor or a physio, we start but we don't finish the course. So we have the proclivity to start something but to never finish. But I tell you what, with my back, I make sure I finish that off. That's one thing I don't play with. I've been going to physio for what, since March, March, April, and I've got no intention of stopping. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep going. But yeah, we need to.
And it's one of those things. The only person that's gonna care about your body is you. Like, no one's gonna force you to go and see a doctor. No one's gonna force you to do the physio plan. And that's why I say, like, your number one priority should be your health. And even though we crack jokes and everything, and P and I haven't gone to do our checkups, which we need to, but in terms of when I hear people are feeling unwell or sick, and you're like, have you gone to the doctor? And they say no. It's like, yo, prevention is better than cure. Getting to it earlier is better than later. Unfortunately, I've got family members who have passed away due to the fact that they didn't go to the hospital in time, or they did go to the hospital and the doctors sort of downplayed what they were feeling. They were like, oh, just take these antibiotics or whatever. And then they later on found out that it was something more serious than that. So if you're feeling anything, go to bug these doctors. Like, I got MRI scans or whatever. If you don't have private care, just keep going every day. Look, I need to see a doctor. I need to,
even if it's the case of getting a second viewpoint.
Yeah.
Second opinion, sorry. You don't have to go to the same doctor, but also, see someone privately at least once and get like a second opinion, because sometimes doctors are just so inundated with patients. They kind of just put you in a bucket and just generalize you and say, yeah, these antibiotics should fix you. If not, come back in 4 weeks' time.
If you feel like it's not helping, come back the next day. Be like, I'm back.
Yeah.
I think also
this is MRI.
Another hard truth.
From the distance, you know what I thought that was? I thought that was something else. Before you zoomed in, I was like,
oh, baby scan.
Yeah, I was like, what?
This was my
Is that the name of the clinic? What's the title?
imaging service. No, so this was a copy of my MRI for my back, for my lumbar and thoracic spine because of the pain. So I got this on disc, and this was done privately. But private medical care is expensive, but it's, if you do it, pay for it and you use it, it definitely does reap its rewards. I think I got a statement of how much I've basically spent in the last 6 months, and I think it's come up to £4,000 through private medical care. But obviously, I haven't paid that 4,000. But it just goes to show, I definitely use my private medical care because, well, number one, I need it, and number two, it's there for me to use.
Yeah, so but how much is your life worth?
Exactly, there's no price. There's
so
no price on it.
It's not expensive.
Exactly. So yeah, it's true. It's not expensive.
The other thing the other hard truth, I think maybe it's worth mentioning, is that for those maybe that are listening and that are not convinced, and they still perhaps want to continue with how they're managing, the other thing to keep in mind is, and it's for all of us, including myself, is that for those that don't see health as a priority, is very selfish. We're very, very selfish, because the question is do you not want to be around long enough to see yourself grow into who you're supposed to be, and also your friends and family around you? Because health has a way of working where all of a sudden today could be fine, and tomorrow it just creeps up on you, bang, and then lights out. So I think we should also look at it like that. By looking after yourself, you're being selfless because you want to be around for those that matter, because you matter as a person. And I think that is a hard truth that we should swallow.
Dope.
That's a powerful statement. For those who don't see health as a priority, are very selfish. Kabilo Timber.
Love that.
Right, guys. I think it's been a fantastic discussion. So I think just to close, is there any kind of final tips or recommendations that we would share? Maybe one tip each to either people that are listening, maybe even to ourselves or our families, in terms of how they can be more conscious of their health.
Everything you go on to achieve, all of the goals that you've set, and everything you want to go and achieve, whether it's financial, non-financial, whatever, it's all predicated off your health.
No one cares about your health as much as you. So go to, like, if you feel like something's up or something's wrong, go and see a doctor. Bug the doctor. Don't undersell your injuries. Anytime I go to a doctor, I over-exaggerate my injuries. Like, I'm like, oh, my knee, like, because if you just walk there and say, I've got a niggling pain on my knee, they'll just take these painkillers, cool. Nah, over-exaggerate it.
A quick joke. My mum, she used to tell me, whenever we used to go to North Middlesex Hospital, she says, the moment we get in through those doors, I need you to over-exaggerate the pain. The reason why is so we can get seen quicker. Otherwise, you're sitting there for 2-3 hours. So I'd find myself in there like, and I'm just like, Mum, shall I keep going? Keep going.
No, for sure. No, over exaggerate. I think also minority communities have a tendency to downplay their pain because they don't want to feel like a nuisance to other people. No, over exaggerate it. Let the doctor know and prioritize your health.
Daniel, how about you?
Similar to what Olu said, but what I said in previous episodes: see your body as like a car. If there's any pain, address it, service it regularly, have an MOT.
And to that car analogy, I was also thinking as well, what happens when you put diesel in an unleaded car?
Mate, you don't start the engine, you have to get it drained out, and it's expensive.
Bruv, game over, man. And that's basically what bad food is like, isn't it?
Yeah. I think with the car example as well, I think with cars, if you put diesel in an unleaded car and then it doesn't work, you can always buy a new car. But with your body, you've literally only got one, which you're expecting to last you close to 100 years. So if you mess that up,
you can buy a new body.
I
There's
don't know.
some, there's
Maybe parts.
some rich people have been living for a long time. You
Maybe
know,
parts. Maybe parts.
kidneys, like parts. Yes, definitely parts.
So probably so the final tip for me is probably a more practical one with what has really helped with my parents is that for me to track their movement, sleep, exercise. After my dad had his stroke, I realized how for me at that time it was very beneficial for me to have a Fitbit, so I could see how much my steps are, what my sleep is. And then I thought, well, why don't I get it from my parents? Because they're telling me they're exercising, they're getting X amount of steps, they're sleeping X amount. But then I basically bought both of my brothers and my parents a Fitbit, and now they've had it for a couple of years. But I have the data behind it to see, okay, how many steps are they doing? My dad used to think before he was sleeping 9 hours after a stroke. Yeah, I'm sleeping for 9 hours, 10 hours. But then when you look at the quality of sleep on Fitbit, it's like 3.5, 4, because he has sleep apnea. Say again.
Are you tracking your
yeah, mate, you have to, because they can tell me whatever they want to say. But one thing I did realize was my mum, she doesn't work, she's a housewife, but just from her keeping the house, managing the house, doing tasks for all of us, she's a very active person. She does 7,000 to 8,000 steps a day. And before, my perception was my dad, who's going out running his restaurants, he's the active one, and my mum's the one who's at home. But then when I got the data behind it, actually it's my mum who's the more active person than my dad, and he's the one going outside. So one thing I'd recommend is just if you want to see that with your parents and you want to have that conversation, and it's actually great to see them see the information as well, because it helps their behavior change as well. So
I would love to get my mum a Fitbit, but I'm afraid she just won't charge it. She'll just leave it.
The funniest thing is when I gave it to my mum the first time, I was like, Mum, so if you put this on your wrist the whole time, it will track your steps. And she was like, what do you mean track your steps? I was like, put it on and you walk. At the end of the day, it will tell you how many steps. So what my mum started doing is walking around the house, and then she saw the number increasing, and she was like, it's really tracking my steps. It's saying I've done 20 steps. I was like, this is data nowadays. So, but no, guys, great conversation. Really appreciate the openness. And now we head over to the book review.
So, book review will be taken by Shuwel.
So it's not a magazine. It's not a journal. I've gone back to the traditional book review and doing a book. Hold on, let me just quickly.
Oh, wonderful!
Sound like Bane.
All right, guys. Actually, this is I think this is a very apt book based on the discussion that we're talking about and kind of our culture. So this book is called "You Missed a Spot." Hold on, let me show you. You Missed a Spot. We're diverse. I'm inclusive. Now, this book I actually read recently on a flight from Switzerland to London 2 days ago. So this got recommended to me from a friend called Arjun, and he works with the guy who is an author of this book. So I want to make sure I pronounce his name properly. The guy's name is Korede Agiri. So Korede is a guy from South London. He's of Nigerian descent, and he was 27 when he wrote this book. And he got introduced to me through Arjun, because Arjun kind of saw what I was talking about on Instagram. He's a listener of the podcast, and he was like, oh, you guys should connect. So he connected me with Korede, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. And
let me see the name, the book again.
You Missed a Spot. His
name on the book.
His name. It says K Agiri.
Is it KR? Is it Korede? Probably in it.
Oh, okay, maybe could be. It's spelled. Hold on, let me see. I don't want to pronounce.
The thing is, I'm waiting for Olu to verify it, but he's just sitting there like this.
So,
because when you said Korede, I was like,
it's Korede.
I've never heard that Nigerian
name.
I'm
glad that we've got our resident Nigerian expert. I want to make sure I respect the name. The thing is, I had a conversation with him over the phone, so if I was saying it wrong, then boy, you didn't correct me. So apologies if I say. So it's spelled Korede.
Yeah, Korede.
Korede.
Yeah. Just pronounce it the way you. It's like when people call me Oli or whatever. It's like there's a Nigerian way to pronounce it, and there's
guys. If I'm pronouncing it, you need to pronounce it properly. So
yeah, if your friend is anything like Olu, I'd pronounce it properly. Because
100%.
Olu's name wrong, yeah, he's coming for you. He's coming
exactly.
for you.
Okay, guys, say the name again for the listeners.
Go on then. It's Korede.
Korede.
Yeah, close.
All right, cool. So, I.
Or is that close?
Let's go.
So basically, I had a conversation with him a couple of months ago, and the reason why he got connected to me is because Arjun saw what I was kind of posting on Instagram. He listens to the podcast, and he knows that we're trying to raise awareness of certain topics within our culture, and also maybe our kind of age group and generation across the globe. Now, what the author did with this amazing book is he is not an author, right? He works in finance. His background is economics. He's worked in different financial companies, and now he's working at an asset management company in a sales role. So this is a guy who actually is very similar backgrounds to us. And one of his mentors had a conversation with him, and he had this kind of thought in him that he wants to write a book about this topic, which I'll get into. And his mentor was like, well, cool. Why don't you just do it then? And he basically went ahead and created this book, got it published through Amazon. I found his story very inspiring, by the way, because I was reading through this and it's amazing content. But on top of that, it's something that I thought, wow, I could, if he has the drive to do this on top of his job, and he has a great message that he's trying to say, then it's something that I feel all of us could do. I think everyone has a story that they can share. So that's what I loved about him as an individual. Now, going back to the book, what this book is about is, so as I mentioned, he's from South London of Nigerian descent, and he was saying that when he was able to join a company, landing a job is one thing, but whether you flourish or not in the role depends on a wide range of factors, right? Some of those factors are within your control. So your work ethic, your drive. This is something that he's not even explaining in the book because he's assuming for you to read this, you've already got that. But what are the factors outside of your control that you can get educated about that will make a difference? So what he talks about in this book is how people of a minority background, typically when we're growing up, we're not exposed to certain types of sports, certain types of things like golf, like tennis, certain things about traveling. He was saying that when he was growing up, he was barely going on holiday, and the only holidays he would go to was back home to Nigeria. Even art, for example, right? When he would grow up, he never really went to a gallery, never went to a museum. And hobbies and interests, what he does, and also fine dining. He was growing up, and if when he was at university, anyone said, "Oh, let's go to a restaurant where it costs £100 a meal," he would be like, "No. Show me like a place, like a fast food place or somewhere where I'm not having to spend that much, because it doesn't make sense to me to spend that money." And then when he joined his corporate role, he realized that he was having conversations with people. And then he started to understand, in terms of sports, people were talking about rugby more. People were talking about golf. In terms of fine dining, people were happy to go to these restaurants and spend a lot of money on the food. Traveling, people would come back from the weekend and say, "Oh yeah, I went here or there," even around the UK or to other countries. And he realized that for him, having these conversations with people, he actually didn't have many stories to tell. And he realized that, of course, everyone's background has got them to the story and to the position where they are. But he's not saying that you should shy away from your individual story, but you should listen and grow as an individual and learn from others around you and the different experiences. So what he does in this book is those chapters: sports, travel, art, hobbies and interests, and fine dining. He talks a bit about what his perception of those areas was before. Then once joining a corporate company, he started having these conversations with people, and he gives his recommendation and views in terms of what you should do, the types of conversations you should have, and even recommendations in terms of places to visit, certain museums, etc. So I love this book for two reasons. One, him as an individual, for having the drive on top of his role, on top of his day-to-day jobs that are very similar to ours, to put this book together and get it self-published and sold through Amazon. And then the content behind it is something that I think resonates with a lot of the people, a lot of maybe our demographic as well, where if you've grown up in a particular area and you haven't been exposed to many things, when you're old enough and working in an environment where you're surrounded by people that are, then don't let that hold you back, and use that as an opportunity to learn from them, and you grow and become a more well-rounded individual. And he's not saying anything that your background is bad, is none of that. Your background has got you to the position where you are, but just to grow and flourish more, be aware of everything else around you. So it was a dope book. Very, very, like, I read the whole thing in a 2-hour flight. And yeah, I honestly love this book. Cannot wait to tell him, because when we had a call a couple of months ago, I said, I love the concept. I ordered it off Amazon, and I can't wait to read it. And then once I've read it, I'm going to do a review on the podcast. So yeah.
No, I think we all can relate.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think it speaks to it really does speak to our heart, because I think we have so many different stories of a similar nature. The thing is, the only thing I'll add to that is we all have a place where we can add value, but it's up to us to be able to see that worth in ourselves. And in the beginning, it is tough because we think we're out of place. But yeah, no, it's a great book. It's a great book.
I'm definitely gonna order that book, man. One, supporting a fellow Nigerian.
Yeah.
And then secondly, like, I can definitely relate to it, because when I started, and some of the stuff people would be talking about, like, let's go. People are like, oh, this weekend you want to go for golf? Want to go play golf this weekend? I'm like, why do people play golf? But now you realize that those are the places where deals are made on that.
Yeah. That's exactly what he's saying. He was like, something like the golf course is where you get the chance to really build relationships, build businesses, and have those conversations in an environment where there's no other distraction. So he's given you the full scope and everything. So, I mean, I'll just repeat it one more time. So it's called You Missed a Spot, We're Diverse, I'm Inclusive. And the author is, do you know, it's because I said his first name wrong. The book, he's just put K Agiri.
Yeah, you probably put K just because you knew that everyone.
Exactly. So I highly recommend it. I think it's available on Amazon. As I said, this is all self-published. I'm super. I don't even know the guy that well, and I feel proud for him reading this book. So I can imagine for those that are around him and they were reading it, they must have been super proud of him as well. So yeah.
Peace. Thank you, Shuwel. Daniel, pass it on to you.
Thank you all for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Find us on Instagram at Take Flight Podcast, or send us an email at takeflightpodcast@gmail.com. That's all for this week, folks.
Thank
you. See you in 2 weeks.
Peace.
Take off.